All right, so today we're diving into something that I think a lot of people maybe struggle with, and that is, you know, we're always told to find your motivation, but like, what happens when that motivation just disappears, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're going to dig into motivation versus discipline today.
That's such a good topic, and I think everyone listening can probably relate to that feeling of like, New Year's resolutions, you're super motivated to start something new,
Totally.
and then like 2 weeks later, you've kind of lost all your steam.
Yeah, it's like that initial excitement, and then it just kind of fizzles out.
It's like fireworks.
Yeah, exactly. And what we're looking at today is, why discipline is so much more powerful when it comes to actually achieving those long-term goals.
And the cool thing is we've got some really awesome material that kind of unpacks all of this, like all the reasons why that happens and then what we can actually do about it.
Yeah, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of like why that happens and what you can do to kind of combat that. So, we're all about like that deep dive here. So let's like jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, like I was saying, we're always told to find your motivation, but like, is motivation really all it's cracked up to be? Like, should we really be like, relying on it so much?
I think a really interesting insight from the stuff that we've looked at is that, motivation is kind of a feeling.
Yeah.
And feelings are fleeting, right? They're like, they ebb and flow, they change. Like,
They're so temporary.
yeah, exactly. And so if you're relying on motivation to like get you to do something, that means that when that feeling's not there, you probably aren't going to do it.
Totally. Yeah, it's not a very reliable thing.
Yeah, it's not the most stable foundation to build your success on. I know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me was, Dr. Angela Duckworth, she talks about this, like motivation can spike really high, but if you don't have systems in place, it can just disappear just as quickly. So it's almost like if you were like super out of shape, but then you tried to run a marathon, you'd have that initial burst of energy, but then you would just completely crash and burn.
Yeah, it's like that initial like excitement, but then you don't actually have like the underlying, systems to support it.
Yes, exactly. You don't have the foundation.
Yeah, and there's this great analogy that our sources use that I think is really helpful.
Oh, I love a good analogy.
It compares motivation to fireworks, right? It's like super exciting, it's visually impressive, but it doesn't last very long.
It's fleeting.
Yeah, exactly. And then it compares discipline to a lighthouse.
Ooh, I like that.
Right, and so it's like maybe not as flashy,
Right.
But it's that like constant steady guide. It's always there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't really like sail a ship through a storm based on fireworks.
Exactly.
You need that steady lighthouse to guide you.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about motivation. We've kind of like debunked it a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
So like what exactly is discipline? Like how do we define it?
Well, the sources put it really simply, and they say that discipline is just like doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it.
So showing up and putting in the work even when you're not really feeling it?
Yeah, exactly. And this is where that James Clear quote really resonates.
Oh, yeah. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
Like, so good, right?
Yeah, good.
It's basically saying, like, discipline is what allows you to build those systems that help you actually reach those goals.
So it's not about like, just like getting inspired.
Yeah.
It's about having those systems in place so that you can consistently do the work.
Exactly. And I think it helps to like think of some concrete examples, like sticking to that workout routine even when it's pouring rain outside, or like
it's freezing cold, you just want to stay in bed.
Yes, or like continuing to study for that exam even when you're exhausted and your brain feels fried.
Or chipping away at that big project, a little bit every day even when you don't feel like it.
Exactly. It's those like consistent small efforts that might not seem like much in the moment, but over time they really add up.
Yeah, it's not always glamorous, but it's so important.
It's the compound effect,
I love that, the compound effect.
Yeah, and the sources give some amazing examples of people who have really achieved incredible things through discipline.
Oh yeah, like Kobe Bryant and his insane work ethic.
Oh my gosh, yes, like getting up at like 4 a.m. to train.
Yeah, that's not motivation, that's discipline.
No, that's like a deep commitment.
Yeah, for sure. And what about Jocko Willink? He says discipline equals freedom, which like sounds kind of weird at first.
Right. Like how can discipline equal freedom?
It seems like the opposite. you know?
Totally. But when you think about it, like if you're disciplined, you're actually making conscious choices about how you spend your time and your energy.
So you're not just like reacting to things or being controlled by your emotions, you're actually in control.
Exactly. You're free to like pursue what matters most to you.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, because you're not being like pulled in a million different directions.
Exactly.
There's David Goggins, like talk about discipline.
Oh my gosh, he's like the embodiment of it.
He calls it brutal discipline.
Right.
And he's accomplished these incredible feats of endurance.
It's insane what he's done.
Of running ultra marathons and stuff.
Yeah, and it's not because he's like naturally gifted or anything. It's like he's just incredibly disciplined.
He's just like pushing himself beyond his limits constantly.
And all these examples really highlight how it's not about some like magical moment of inspiration.
Right, it's about that day in and day out commitment.
It's about like building those habits and routines and like sticking to them even when it's hard.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about like the power of discipline, like how it works.
Yeah.
But let's get into like the science of it. Like, how does discipline actually affect our brains?
This is where it gets really interesting. The sources talk about this concept called neuroplasticity.
Ooh, that's a big word.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it basically means that our brains can change and adapt throughout our lives.
Like they're not fixed.
Exactly. And so when we consistently practice discipline, we're actually strengthening the neural pathways associated with self-control and focus.
So it's like building a muscle.
Exactly. And specifically, it strengthens this area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for things like planning, decision-making, and impulse control.
So it's like doing mental push-ups.
I love that analogy, like mental push-ups.
So by making those disciplined choices, you know, like choosing to focus on a task instead of getting distracted.
Yeah.
Or planning ahead instead of procrastinating.
Or resisting that temptation to like scroll through social media.
Yeah, exactly. We're essentially training our brains to be more disciplined.
And the more we practice discipline, the more automatic it becomes.
So it's not something we have to force ourselves to do. It just becomes part of who we are.
It becomes a habit, you know?
Food habit.
Exactly.
So discipline is not just some like abstract concept. It's actually changing the physical structure of our brains.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Okay, so I know we've been like kind of bashing motivation this whole time.
Yeah.
But like it does have its place, right?
Totally. I mean, motivation is what gets us started, you know? It's that initial spark that gets us excited about a new goal.
It's like the initial push.
Yeah, and it can be really helpful for like setting direction, you know, like figuring out what we actually want to achieve.
Right. But we can't rely on it to like carry us through the entire journey.
Exactly.
Like motivation might get you to the starting line, but discipline is what actually gets you to the finish line.
I love that.
It's like, you know, motivation might give you the map, but discipline is the car that gets you there.
Yes, and the gas and the driver.
Yeah, exactly. So like, how can we actually cultivate more discipline in our lives? Like, what are some practical tips?
Well, the sources recommend starting small. You know, like don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight.
Yeah, that sounds overwhelming.
Right. So instead, just focus on making small, consistent changes.
Like one thing at a time.
Yeah, like maybe start by waking up 15 minutes earlier each day.
Or reading for 10 minutes before bed.
Or doing a quick 5-minute workout.
Yeah, and then once those small changes become habits, you can gradually add more.
Exactly.
It's like building momentum, you know?
Exactly. And another really helpful tip is to create routines.
Oh yeah, routines are my jam.
They make such a difference because they eliminate decision fatigue.
Totally. It's like when you have a routine, you don't have to waste mental energy deciding what to do.
Exactly, it just becomes automatic.
And that frees up your brain power for other things.
Yes.
The sources also talk about tracking your habits.
Oh yeah, tracking is huge.
Like, why is that so important?
Because it gives you visual feedback on your progress.
Oh, so you can see how far you've come.
Exactly, and it also keeps you accountable.
Oh yeah, because you're less likely to skip a day if you know you have to like mark it down on your tracker.
Exactly, and there's something really motivating about seeing those streaks, you know?
Yeah, it's like a little reward.
Totally.
So what about our environment? Like, does that play a role in our ability to be disciplined?
Oh, absolutely. The sources emphasize the importance of designing your environment to support your goals.
Oh, I love that. Like setting yourself up for success.
Yes. So, for example, if you want to read more, keep books in places where you'll actually see them.
Yeah, like on your nightstand or on the coffee table.
Exactly. Or if you're trying to eat healthier, don't keep junk food in the house.
Yeah, make it harder to make those bad choices.
Exactly. It's all about reducing temptation.
Make the disciplined choice the easy choice.
Exactly.
And finally, the sources talk about the importance of self-compassion.
Oh yeah, this is huge.
Because like, we're not going to be perfect all the time. right?
Of course not.
We're going to slip up. We're going to have setbacks.
It's inevitable.
And it's so important to be kind to ourselves when that happens.
Absolutely. Like, don't beat yourself up. Just acknowledge it, learn from it, and move on.
Yeah, it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
So to wrap things up, the sources we've explored today really highlight how discipline is the key to long-term success.
It's like the foundation.
Yeah, and while motivation can be helpful for getting started, it's discipline that keeps us going.
And helps us achieve those big goals.
And it's not just about achieving goals, it's about like taking control of our lives.
Yeah, like being intentional with our time and energy.
And ultimately creating the life we want.
It's about freedom.
Yeah, exactly. So for you listening right now, the takeaway is this. Don't wait for motivation to strike. Just start taking action.
Even if it's just small steps.
To build those habits, those routines.
And remember, discipline equals freedom.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the power of discipline.
It's been a pleasure.
And for you, our listener, here's a final thought to ponder. Think about an area in your life where you've been relying on motivation and ask yourself, how could applying a little bit of discipline change things?
What could you achieve if you were just a little bit more consistent?
Remember, small disciplines repeated over time can lead to huge results.
So start building that discipline today.
And see where it takes you.
You might be surprised by what you can accomplish.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time. Bye.